Welcome to Sports Spectrum, the sports and faith podcast that brings Jesus back into the conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
This episode of Sports Spectrum's podcast with Ingle Martin. He is the head football coach at Christ Presbyterian Academy and a former NFL quarterback. This episode is brought to you by Compassion International, the most trusted child development ministry in the world. For more information about how you can release a child from poverty, I want you to check out the website, compassion.com/sports spectrum. compassion.com/sports spectrum, and pray about sponsoring a child today. Ingle Martin is a former NFL quarterback selected in the 5th round of the 2006 NFL Draft, pick number 148 by the Green Bay Packers. He played his college ball in Florida for a few years and then went to Furman down in South Carolina, where he really kind of established himself as a bona fide talent to the point where the Packers took a chance on him in the 5th round in 2006. And he sat behind a couple of pretty good quarterbacks to learn from in Green Bay, namely Hall of Famer Brett Favre and future Hall of Famer Aaron Rodgers. And Ingle Martin talks about playing behind Brett and Aaron here on the podcast. He also played with the Tennessee Titans, the Kansas City Chiefs, and had a cup of coffee, as he likes to say, a couple of weeks with the Denver Broncos in 2009, and then moved on to coaching and just finished his 10th season as a head coach in high school football and his 9th season with Christ Presbyterian Academy, where they were the state runner-ups in 2019. After starting out 0-4 and 2-6, they made it all the way to the state championship game. This was a lot of fun talking to Ingle Martin about coaching, about adversity, helping out these high school kids dealing with adversity, what the difference between football adversity and life adversity is. And he also talked about how his faith really took shape for him through college, both at Florida and then at Furman and into the NFL. Take a listen to Ingle Martin, former NFL quarterback, head football coach at Christ Presbyterian Academy in Nashville, Tennessee. Ingle Martin joins us here on Sports Spectrum. Ingle, welcome to Sports Spectrum.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me on.
It's good to talk to you, Ingle. We're glad to have you here. Let's start with 2019 as we run this in early 2020. The 2019 season just ended. It was your 10th overall coaching, your 9th with Christ Presbyterian Academy, CPA. What was it like coaching this team this season? I know you came up just a little bit short of your goal, but it was still a pretty good year.
It was. And, this season for us in our community was one that I think a lot of us will always remember. We graduated 31 seniors from the 2018 team. I think 7 or 8 of them are playing college football now. And so that's all anybody wanted to talk about. And of course, for our kids, hearing about all of that, I think they just wanted to kind of break away as quick as they could and get the season going. And really, listening to our strength coach talk about the way that they worked a year ago, January, really was amazing. And then those kids just kept doing it. And I think really the theme of our year was just never folding, And when we look at, starting out 0-4, we were 1-5, then we were 2-6, and then to be, a couple minutes away, we were leading the 4th quarter of the state championship. It was amazing. And, just the way that the kids kept working was inspiring. The way that they just had so much courage going in. I mean, in today's society with social media the way that it is, we're all kind of wanting to have this instant gratification, and our kids are no different. And so being able to sustain, even walking off the field and having parents say, what are you guys doing? You guys aren't any good this year, or even within our own school. I think just for those guys to keep showing up on Mondays and working hard, keep believing in each other, keep believing in what we were trying to do was really, it was courageous. And that's what I told them. What this year was just a microcosm for what I hope you guys will become as men. People that never will fold on their family, that won't fold on the people they're working with, and ultimately they're not going to fold on who Jesus is and their faith. And so, we really, it's hard in this day and time to not put your identity in your performance, but we really, for 9 years, have been working on having those kids separate what a true man is, and on the football field, it's probably in our society that's the easiest place for a man to get some identity from, just being successful as an athlete. And especially in the game of football, makes you a man. And so it's been really fun. It's been just a blessing for myself and all the coaches that we've had working with these kids to kind of be working on that. And it's been very rewarding, I think, for all of us.
Tell me about adversity and I call it the great teacher in life, adversity, right? Because especially at young ages, these kids, I think when they go through adversity, they don't see the lesson in it. They're just kind of going through it. I have a daughter, not a son, but she's 15, and adversity is very hard for her to go through at the moment. But when you look back, obviously adversity to me is a great teacher of life. What did you learn this year about your team, and maybe for you as much as for the kids, on how adversity maybe refined you and shaped you this year?
Yeah, so and that's why I love coaching high school football, because and we actually just had our banquet a couple of days ago, and that was one of the things I kind of left the team with. Like, we went through football adversity. I think it's important to distinguish between the two. I think too often people in sports, especially guys trying to get kids or players fired up, try to correlate things directly to life, and it really diminishes what actually happens in our lives, with true adversity. And so football adversity for us this year was the greatest that I've seen in my 10 years coaching, and really maybe even my whole time playing or coaching. Being down, we played some really good teams, so all of our mistakes were magnified. It wasn't like we played in 6 or 7 games where it was a one-score game. We were in several games where it was over fairly quickly, and so to be able to keep coming back football adversity wise was a true testament to these kids, and that's what really I hope the purpose of high school athletics is that we can teach these kids that through adversity, through these little small, like I said, this football adversity this year for us, maybe they can take something with them the rest of their life. And our team this year was really characterized by our senior class and just the leadership that they showed. And you just said what a great teacher adversity is. And we have some kids on our team and in our school that have been through real adversity, not football adversity. The guy who won we give a Player of the Year award. As a freshman, he lost his dad. And his dad was one of our teachers at our school, and a guy that impacted people a lot further than just the classroom. And, it was a guy that could walk by you in the hallway, and he could just sense when someone needed someone to say something encouraging. His name was Ben Ellis. And so Ben Ellis, for me as a young coach and a young teacher, was a great example of trying to love kids and love people where they were. And so Sam Ellis, who was our senior and one of our leaders and the guy who won our award this year, he went through real adversity. And so when he did that, he had no choice but to grow up. He was the oldest male in the house at that point. And in the last 3 years, I've watched God grow that kid up, and it's just been amazing. And it's no wonder why he is who he is today, because he's been through real adversity. So I think in sports, if we can try to connect that this is adversity, and yes, you're sad that you lost the game, or maybe you're not starting, or maybe you're not playing, or maybe practice is tough, but life is the exact same way, and you're going to have to display the same character traits that it takes to be successful in sports, to be somebody to be someone that a girl wants to have as her boyfriend, to be a husband that a woman wants to stay married to, and ultimately to be a dad that kids are connected to emotionally, not just a dad that is providing physical things for their children. And so I have no doubt in my mind that because of Sam Ellis's adversity, his real adversity that he faced, he was that much more prepared for this football adversity this year. And we have several other kids in similar situations, but Sam just sticks out in my mind right now. And so God's going to use Sam in some amazing ways, but it will be truly remarkable to watch how he has chosen to lean into who God wants him to be in the midst of that true adversity. And he's already blessing people. I watched him bless people for the last 4 years in our locker room. He's blessed coaches. He blesses kids in the hallway. He blesses his mom and the rest of his brothers and sisters. And it's just really neat to watch. So that's a long answer about adversity being a great teacher. But I think the really good coaches that I've been around can take you past your temporary dissatisfaction, your temporary pain in sports, and been able to kind of pull out, you showed me this year, or you showed me this in this moment in sports, and I know you're going to have it when it matters. When maybe your wife, one day you go to a doctor's appointment with her and she's diagnosed with cancer, or maybe one of your children gets sick or gets hurt, or maybe you lose your job, or maybe you're in a situation where you're on a business trip and you're sitting in a bar and you're by yourself, and an attractive woman comes and sits by you. Are you going to fold? Are you going to be the guy that doesn't act like he's married, that wants to just satisfy something right then and there? Or are you going to be the man that knows your limits and knows your weaknesses and tries to keep yourself out of those situations? So, really, I think sports can be so powerful for these kids.
Ingle Martin is our guest here on Sports Spectrum. So let's learn about your faith journey. Take us to where Christ started to become real for you when God became a huge part of your life.
So for me, I was raised in a Christian household. Both my parents were raised as Christians. And so, Sunday morning, my mom didn't have a whole lot of rules, but she wanted us at church. And she was notorious if I spent the night out at someone's house for calling them and waking everyone up in the house at 7 a.m. to make sure that I was getting up to come to church. So I have many moments in my life where I felt embarrassed. And when I look back, I'm so thankful that she cared enough to not worry about what other people thought about her, and still called and woke everyone up. So it's been something that I've certainly been around, and I've heard enough stories now in my life to know that God doesn't always just grab you because your parents made you go to church. And really, I think for me, leaving my house as a senior in high school and going to college, and having my mom just give me the blessing of, I don't care where you go to church, I just know how important it will be for you to get up on a Sunday and be connected to that kind of church community. So I went through really, 4 or 5 years of college, going through real adversity and football adversity. When I graduated high school, my parents divorced. A month later, one of my roommates, A. Ross Otan at the University of Florida, he died, in the summer of 2001 when Corey Stringer died. Yeah. There were several other deaths that summer. And so real adversity hit. That January of 2002, Coach Spurrier, out of nowhere, decides to resign and go take the Redskins job. And so what had been a relatively uneventful life for myself up to that point became pretty tumultuous. And so, again, how God works is amazing. But I had some unbelievable roommates, and looking back on my life, I just call them lighthouses. People that when things were dark around me, they showed light on my path. And they were beacons of hope that I really think Jesus put in my life. And so one of my roommates, a guy named Todd McCullough, I watched him every night as a freshman in college get on his knees and pray to God. A buddy of mine who was a golfer down there, Dwight Rodgers, was a great example of just of what a Christian friend meant. Daryl Carpenter, another football player, tight end, who again breathed so much life into me. And then really meeting my now wife, the two of us started dating after my freshman year, and I soon realized how special she was. And so going through college, being able to go to different churches and experience different leadership styles and different head coaches, I got to go through lots of different learning opportunities. But having to leave the University of Florida after the 2003 season because I wanted to play and transferring to Furman University, that was the first kind of time I felt God put his arm around me and say, I got you. Because in the world's eyes, leaving the University of Florida and going to Furman University was not the right move, football-wise. If you wanted to compete at the highest level, then you need to stay at Florida. And I just really felt God say, I got you, trust me in this. And I went and transferred to Furman University in Greenville, South Carolina, and spent 2 years there. And I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you if I hadn't transferred. 2 years after that, I got drafted by the Packers. So football-wise, it ended up working out. And really, again, was put around some amazing men. My head coach, Bobby Lamb, and offensive coordinator, Tim Sorrells, who coached me at Furman. They showed me that you can be an amazing coach, but you also can be an amazing father. And before that, I didn't think that you could be. I thought you had to be a guy, if you wanted to coach, that worked all the time and basically chose your job over your family. And I saw two guys at the college level say, you know what, my family is actually more important than you. And that was huge because coming from University of Florida, nothing was more important than the football team and nothing was more important than the quarterback, And so just a small little story for you on my official visit to Furman.
Yeah.
I go through a normal visit, and I'd been on 5 official visits coming out of high school to Alabama, LSU, Florida, Tennessee, and University of Virginia. And so I had been around big-time visits. And so I'm at Furman, and I get the itinerary, and I notice on Sunday that I'm not going to meet them until noon. And I was like, Coach, are you sure this is right? You don't want me to come over for breakfast or anything? And he said, no, why don't you and your mom go eat breakfast? I've got to teach Sunday school this morning, and then I go to lunch with my family, and then I'll come meet you. And my mom will tell you that she remembers it. I remember like it was yesterday. It just hit us in the face like a bat. Like, these guys have their priorities right. And so, again, just being at Furman, being around those guys, just knowing and trusting, hearing God say, I got you, and just how it works. I get drafted. And immediately go back in. And if I had, 2 hours with you, I could really start talking about it, but immediately went back into this identities in my performance. And not being sure about yourself is not a very good place to be in the NFL. And especially if you're behind Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers like I was as a rookie. So you're talking about eating some humble pie. Those guys were amazing. Brett was awesome. Great guy. I love being around him. Aaron Rodgers is just a freak athlete. People don't talk about how smart Aaron Rodgers is. That guy's brilliant. Just really, really capable. And obviously, they both have Hall of Fame careers, and Aaron's going to be one of the best quarterbacks to ever play the game. So I say all that. My 4 years in the NFL was this wave of performance in my identity, and having to get through that and again, not getting what I thought I wanted. I thought being at the University of Florida was what was going to be good for me. I thought winning a Heisman Trophy was going to be what would fulfill me. And not having those things happen, not having, a 15-year NFL career, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you, and I wouldn't have had the last 10 years of my life were really coaching these kids in high school football. I felt more alive than I did ever playing. I told somebody one time, they were asking me about, do you miss playing and do you wish you could still be playing? And I said, sometimes I do, but what's crazy is I had a chance to earn so much more money playing in the NFL than I do as a high school football coach. And I can't even tell you how much harder I work now for way less money. And I've come to realize that it wasn't ever about the money for me. It was about the work that I was doing. And so just being somewhere where you can feel like what you're doing is glorifying God. It's been amazing. And sitting here after this year, we were 7-7 and, a couple minutes away from winning the state championship. And again, being 0-4 and 1-5 and 2-6 and being able to still find joy in that with the guys that I'm coaching with the kids that I'm coaching, it was amazing. And so, I'm a blessed guy to be where I am. But it's not it's not by chance. It's not for just some arbitrary reason. God's got me. And whether I'm coaching at Christ Presbyterian Academy, 10 more years or 10 more minutes, I just want to continue to lean into what God has for me.
Ingle, what was faith like when you got to the NFL? Was that something that was easy for you to sort of acclimate into? I know I talked to many NFL guys, players, coaches, chaplains. Obviously, the NFL is great in offering chapel services and things like that. But how were you able to stay connected to God, or was that a struggle for you?
Well, so I just got married January of 2006. I got drafted in April 2006. And a week later, I was in rookie minicamp camp in Green Bay, Wisconsin. And so being newly married and having this excitement of kind of reaching the pinnacle of sport for me, it was amazing. And again, one of these lighthouses was a guy named Kabir Bajabiamila, who was an all-pro defensive end. And he was a guy that took me to the side. And again, a rookie, most teams I've been on, you're a rookie, you don't have any value, get out of the way. We got Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers, and Kabir looked at everyone as having value. And so Kabir was quickly, I say preaching. He was literally mentoring, ministering, whatever you want to call it, to me and probably a bunch of other guys. And he, said, hey, there's this marriage seminar this weekend that my church is putting on. Why don't you come to it? And I was like, I don't have anything to do. Sure, I'll go. So I went as a newly married guy by myself to a marriage seminar my first couple of weeks in Green Bay, and it was amazing. So God just continued to put people like that around me. Coming to the Tennessee Titans, my wife Jennifer and I were in a small group Bible study that Reggie Pleasant, who was our team chaplain, put on. And we were there with several people that are really close to us still today. And one of them, Leroy Harris, just started working with me at CPA, the school that I coach at, 2 years ago. And he's coaching our offensive line. His wife and their kids, we hope, are coming over. But it's been amazing. So to be around those godly people and to have them still continue to be a part of my life is a true blessing. And then, just thinking about Dustin Colquitt, who's still kicking for the Chiefs. He's been in the Pro Bowl as a punter, but Dustin, as a third-year guy, Dustin looked at my wife and I and said, hey, have you ever heard of Pro Athlete Outreach, PAO? And we hadn't, and he and his wife paid for my wife and myself to go out to this conference in San Diego, California. So, again, just looking at all these different people in my life, it was amazing, and we did a off-season Bible study in Kansas City, and that was really the first time that I studied anything that Joe Ehrman was doing. And we read the book Season of Life, which if any of your listeners haven't read it, I highly recommend it. And everything that we're doing in our football program started with reading Season of Life about Joe Ehrman and the guy that wrote it, Jeffrey Marks, is an amazing writer, and just a really captivating story, and the intentionality with which Joe and his best friend Biff, the way that they treated the boys under their care at the Gilman School in Baltimore, Maryland, was inspiring. And so because Joe had the courage to step out and try to do something different, which was loving kids in sport, I think we've got a whole country that's changing the way that we look at sports, and it's been really inspiring. And so I hope that we're just doing our part here in Nashville.
Ingle Martin is our guest here on Sports Spectrum. A couple more questions here with Ingle. So take me to pivoting from the NFL. Talk to a lot of guys who struggle with that post-NFL journey, and obviously you're a coach, so you've gotten it all kind of settled now. But a lot of guys initially struggle with that post-NFL career because they always say, the NFL, you don't retire, the NFL retires you. And then suddenly nobody team wants you anymore, whether you still have it or not. And you're 20, if I'm doing the math right, in 2009, you're 27 years old in your last year. So you're 28 years old and the NFL is no longer. What was that adjustment like for you going from playing to eventually coaching in that middle ground of having to accept that football is no longer a thing I'm going to be able to do?
Well, I guess for me, I always had this idea that I could play 10 years and put $10 million in the bank. That was kind of 10 years, $10 million in the bank, and I'd be good. And I didn't reach either of those, and amazingly, I'm still good. Yeah. But I thought after I put $10 million in the bank, then I could afford to coach high school football, And that's pretty funny how it's worked out. Didn't come close to 10 years, didn't come remotely close to $10 million in the bank. So when I got done playing, and again, looking back, what a blessing it was. My wife was pregnant with our first child in 2009. My last week of playing, actually played 6 weeks in the UFL, the old United Football League that was around for 3 or 4 years. And my last week, our first child was born 6 weeks early. Mm-hmm. And so when my career ended, I got to spend, the first 7 months of my son's life with him and with my wife. And it was amazing. And it was all because I got to play in this horrible, terrible football league called the United Football League, And so when I got done, I went down for a workout with the Jaguars in January of that 2010, right after the 2009 season. And I don't know if the GM at the time remembers, but we all met, after your workout, and they kind of talked to you for a minute. And I think he and I were in there for 20 or 30 minutes, and I just went through, this has been a great ride, but if I'm not going to make this team, please don't call my agent back. I don't want to come down and be another camp arm. I was kind of over it at that point, and really just kind of looking forward to what was next. And the guy that coached me in high school had gone to another school. He called me in March of 2010 and said, "Hey, we've got a job until the rest of the year. If you want to come fill it out, it'd be a great way to see if this is what you want to do." And I went in and I helped out the rest of the year. They offered me a spot the next year, and I kind of looked at it, as an NFL player, you're used to making money for 3 or 4 months out of the year, and then you save it and you live on it the rest of the time until the next season. And so we had kind of saved up enough that I didn't have to go to work. But the way I looked at it is I can make $2,000 a month teaching, or I can grab $2,000 out of my bank. So I went and started doing that. And at the end of our first football season, the 2010 season, where I helped coach, December, I was looking to get out, and it's crazy how God works, but I was interviewing medical sales jobs and the whole 9 yards. And the school that I'm at, Christ Presbyterian Academy, had a job come open. And my wife had been working there for 3 years. And she said, "I think they're going to call you about being the head coach." And, I'm, like you said, I'm 27 years old, just getting out, just turned 28, just got done playing, and I'm trying to get out of coaching. And I hear God say, just trust me, just listen to this, And so I listened, and that process was really amazing, because kept getting more and more confirmation, and I kept going further and further away from what I thought was the reason that I was going to coach. And by the end of it, I realized that God was just saying, I don't care what you do. I just want to be a part of your life. You know, I don't care if you sell hospital beds or if you're coaching. I just want to be a part of your life and everything that you do. And up until that point, for me in sports, when I crossed that white line, man, I learned that I had to flip a switch, and it was all about winning and all about competing. And at that moment, when I ended up taking the job at CPA, it was like, you don't have to do that. You can compete. And we talk about it now through, again, a bunch of work that we've been doing. But we talk about being an honorable opponent, having honorable competition. And I think there's a way to go and knock people's heads into the ground and you know, play physical style of football and still help them up, because your identity's not on the line, their identity's not on the line. It's literally just trying to find the joy in playing, I think, the greatest team sport that's ever been invented, football, and not making it be some huge contest of manhood, you know. And so, that's really what it was. And so for the last 9 years, working with the coaches that I'm working with, and a guy who's been a huge part of our success, a guy named Randy Heron, who he was, you know, I have to hire an offensive coordinator and a defensive coordinator and maybe a special teams coordinator, but he was hired and he doesn't even coach, never coached one minute for us, but he's our spiritual coordinator and really a mentor for me and the rest of the coaches and players. But just the way that, you know, for the last 9 years, we've all tried to work on our own story, tried to make sure that we knew what it was like to be coached by each one of us. We knew what our triggers were that brought us to moments where we might snap on a kid or a situation. We talked about how much, you know, how much we feared different things. We talked about where we found joy. And really for 9 years, man, we've got a group of guys who come in and they do their work, but they also are trying to love their wives well. They're trying to love their kids well. They're trying to be the best teacher they can be. And then when they get to, they can come out and hopefully find some joy coaching football and being around the kids that we're blessed to coach.
Ingle Martin, this has been great having you here on Sports Spectrum, and I really do appreciate you sharing your story and your journey. And we'll have to do it again because there's a lot more questions I think that I have. But for time restraints, let's end it with this question, and it's one that we ask all of our guests here on Sports Spectrum. What is the Lord teaching you today? So you've kind of come full circle, and you're now coaching, and you're in your 10th. You just finished your 10th year of coaching, 9th year at CPA. What are you learning from God in the season of life that you're in right now?
Well, I think it's just continuing to trust Him and lean into Him and understand that He's going to be there. He's going to direct whatever that next step is for me, for my family, and just really, and it's how I pray, and I try to remember when I do pray to just ask the Lord's will to be done. And so. You know, when my wife prays with our boys or when I do, I always try to make sure they hear me say, give me the words to speak and the ears to hear and the eyes to see, Lord, and just pray that your will is done through me. And really, I don't know. I've learned this. I don't know what I need, you know. Everything that I've tried to think that I need or that I wanted, the Lord has shown me pretty easily that's not what you need. And so just continuing to pray that His will be done.
He is Ingle Martin, former NFL quarterback, head football coach at Christ Presbyterian Academy. Ingle, thanks for being here on Sports Spectrum. And listen, man, Happy New Year to you. Wish you nothing but the best in 2020, and let's catch up again soon.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, Jason. And really just appreciate your heart behind these podcasts, and you know, I just pray that you continue to feel encouraged, and we'll continue to pump these out. I had to listen to one just to see what this was about, and I caught one where you were talking with one of the chaplains from the San Antonio Spurs, and so just keep it up, man. That was unbelievable, and really appreciate you spending your time doing this.
Well, thanks so much. It's been a journey. We'll just say that for the last almost 3 years now, and I find the more I talk to people, I find there's not a lot of spaces where you can intersect sports and faith in a media setting. And so we're able to do that. And thank you for that encouragement. That means a lot. So really appreciate it. Ingle, thanks again.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Jason.
And that was Ingle Martin, the former NFL quarterback, joining us here on Sports Spectrum, and just appreciate him being a part of what we're doing here with sports intersecting the world of faith. Now, I can't find anything on social media on Ingle Martin, but you can follow his football team at CPA Football on Twitter. CPA, Christ Presbyterian Academy Football on Twitter. And I love the Bible verse that's listed on their Twitter page, 2 Corinthians 4:18. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but what is unseen. For what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. Love that. Thanks to Ingle for being here on Sports Spectrum. Also want to thank our partners, our sponsors, Compassion International, the most trusted child development ministry in the world. And what they do is provide an outlet, provide a way for you and I to help release a child across the globe from poverty. Every single child deserves hope. Every single child deserves a chance. Compassion provides that chance through a sponsorship program, with every child not only being given the opportunity to have food and education and medical care and vocational training, but every single child is discipled in the Word of God and shown the love of Jesus. It's what it's all about. To learn more, go to the website, compassion.com/sportsspectrum. You'll see a list of children there, and then pray about it. Pray about sponsoring a child. Compassion.com/sportsspectrum, and sponsor a child today. Thanks for listening to this episode of Sports Spectrum. We love you guys. We hope you have a great rest of your day. Before we leave here, just want to encourage you to check out our website too, sportsspectrum.com, the home for all of our content, where sports and faith connect. We're talking about daily devotionals every day, every single podcast, articles on the intersection of sports and faith, featuring athletes that you watch on television and root for, these guys that love Jesus and are playing at the highest level. And then we also feature people like Ingle Martin, a high school football coach, and we're able to tell these stories of how God is working profoundly in people's lives in the world of sports. So check out our website, sportsspectrum.com. See you next time. This is the Sports Spectrum Podcast. I am Jason Romano. And again, have a great rest of your day.